Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys briefly about something that kind of annoys me a little bit sometimes when we try to discuss science, nutrition, videos related to these things, or topics related to these things on the internet. And that is the conspiracy theorist end of every time we try to discuss anything that government agencies put out, people always want to throw their conspiracy theories in there. And I'm not saying there aren't real conspiracies. I'm not saying government or government agencies always have your best interest in mind, because we know they don't. We know occasionally bad things happen, and we do know that these organizations don't always look out for your best interest. But the assumption that they are always not looking out for it, particularly when there are well-meaning doctors and researchers and other people involved who are gathering the data, putting out the information, is taking things too far. And oftentimes they do give us good guidelines. So when we talk about things like tuna, we talk about things like raw milk. People want to inject their conspiracy theories as, oh, they're trying to harm you, as some sort of viable argument against the information that they're putting out. For example, them putting out information saying, hey, there are limits on how much tuna you can eat because there's too much mercury in it. These are the calculations, and if you go beyond this amount, that's beyond what we recommend as a safe threshold. There is no possible benefit for them to give you that information or to say you shouldn't be giving this to your pregnant wives, or if you're nursing children, this is too much mercury in your diet, you shouldn't eat this much of this amount of fish. We put those guidelines out. There's no conspiracy theory that's logical that you can come up with to say that those doctors who did that research and put out that information through the FDA, that they're trying to harm you with that information. And if you're wrong and they're right, and that mercury in that tuna is bad, then you're harming yourself by not taking their advice. The same thing when it comes to things like the raw milk. There's not a conspiracy to suppress raw milk. That the CDC is trying to harm you by saying, no, you shouldn't be consuming raw milk. That if you're going to consume milk, that it probably needs to be pasteurized. And I'm not that big on milk, guys, but if you're going to consume it, it needs to be pasteurized, because we have reports of all of these various bacteria found in there. And for people who go and do some basic reading, there are thousands of people who get sick, and hundreds of people in the last decade in the United States, hundreds of people who have been hospitalized from drinking raw milk due to E. coli, salmonella, things like that. And we've had 2 deaths in this millennium in the US, 2 deaths directly responsible for drinking raw milk. The data is there. Go do some basic research. So when the CDC is putting that out, they're not trying to put out some sort of conspiracy to harm you. They're trying to give you some basic guidelines that not hurt you as much. And so when they put guidelines on saying, hey, you shouldn't consume too much sugar, these are kind of some guidelines. This is probably about as much as you want to consume safely. They're not trying to harm you with that. When they say you probably shouldn't consume more than about 30 grams of saturated fat per day, they're not saying that to harm you, because there's magical health benefits to consuming 100 grams of saturated fat a day. And that's what people don't grasp. These guidelines are not intended by any logical person that you could conceive that there's some sort of conspiracy involved to where the CDC and the FDA is trying to kill you by making you not consume massive amounts of saturated fat or massive amounts of fructose. That these things are actually really healthy. I mean, that's the only logical conclusion that someone could come up with, is that, oh, they don't want you to consume these because they're going to help you in some way. But here's the kicker that it comes down to. These are well-meaning doctors and researchers who are putting this information out on these topics. They probably know more than you. They probably know more than the person who's writing the conspiracy theories about this. And I don't mean to appeal to authority, but when you're talking about your health and your well-being, when you have a consensus of medical doctors who all agree that something is unhealthy or could harm your health if you do it, you are gambling your own health and your own life if you decide that their advice is part of some conspiracy by the government. You are gambling with your own health and life and that of your children when you do that. So you really need to step back and assess that and go, well, is that really safe for me to just assume that's a conspiracy trying to harm me, or should I pay attention, because they are a bunch of medical doctors and they do probably know more about this than I do. Not every time, but odds are they do. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time. But let me give you guys a bicep shot before I go. Oh, Mount Vesuvius.